Hi, my name is Roisin McNamara and welcome to the High Flyers in STEM podcast. Today we're really excited to speak to Michael Howe. He is the VP of Engineering and Business Development with Aran Biomedical. Today we talk about his career journey and the steps he took and the challenges he faced in becoming the VP of Engineering for Aran Biomedical, the pros and cons of taking risks in your career and when they're worth taking, the importance of empowering your workforce and the value of work-life balance for your employees. Focus, upskilling, and motivation are especially important if people are to give their best efforts and perform their jobs. Thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you enjoy the show. Hi, Michael. Welcome to our High Flyers in STEM podcast. We're really excited to talk to you today. For our listeners, can you introduce yourself and give us an overview of your own background?
Sure. So Michael Howe, I'm Vice President of Engineering and Business Development here in Aran Biomedical. So I'm with the business here in Aran about 4 years now, just over 4 years. I joined as a Director of Engineering and segued over pretty quickly to business development. And so at the moment, I'm responsible for global business development within Aran and also design services engineering, that kind of front-end R&D analysis and working and prototyping with customers. Prior to that, I was just over 17 years, nearly 18 years with Creganna. So that was a great journey with Creganna back in the day. I mean, I joined that business when there was about 75, 80 people overall in Creganna, but there was only about 35 in medical device at the time. Creganna was spawned out of a metal bashing, for want of a better word, metal coating shop. It did a lot of contract work for, bicycle clip manufacturers, electronics companies, storage data companies, etc. Coatings was their coating of metals was their core business. And it grew from a kind of a core of maybe 35 when I was there to the global business that it is today. It had been bought by TE and, several thousand people working worldwide for it. So I had a great voyage with Creganna, learned a lot from small business all the way up to working with large enterprises. And then, as I said, learned a lot and was able to transfer a lot of those learnings here into Aran, because it's a very, very similar business model here. We're working a lot with the same customers, a lot of the same international clients, but different technologies, so Aran is all about implants. Creganna was about delivery systems. Aran is about implants. But the business process of selling to clients, engaging with clients, bringing them in, talking to them, getting our engineers talking to them, it's the same business process, but just different technologies and more value add as well. So it's been great, to transfer those learnings. It's like, if you play a video game and you make a hames of it and you go back in the second time and you do it better, it's like it almost feels like that at times, so
you would have brought a wealth of knowledge. I think it was 17 years or something. So you would have brought into Aran Biomedical, which is fantastic.
That's right, yeah.
And when you're looking at your own sort of background and the educational choices that you made, you studied mechanical engineering. Did you always know that's what you wanted to study, or how did you make that educational choice?
Yeah, I kind of fell into it really. So I came from a family of 5, and there was 3 older brothers, and some of them did engineering, 2 of them did engineering, 1 did industrial chemistry, and they went to 3rd level. So it was always expected that I'd go to 3rd level, if you know what I mean. Yes. But I really didn't know what I wanted to do when I was 17, and lots of different things out there. We had a small farm at one stage. I was thinking maybe I could be a vet, and another time I was thinking about commerce, thinking about, everybody looks at medicine because it's high points, and it's like, oh, that would be a great status thing, but is it really what you want to do? So toying with lots of ideas. And I got a summer job when I was 17, in the middle of, I just completed my leaving cert, and it was in a aluminium die casting company in Limerick, Atlas Aluminium, and my brother worked there. And I thought, what, maybe this engineering thing isn't too bad. So I actually changed my CAO points or my CAO application, should I say, if you know what I mean, and put engineering higher up the rankings. And mechanical engineering in Galway is what came out of the CAO offer, and so I took it and went for it. And again, the first couple of years in college, engineering in college, particularly the first couple of years, can be very theoretical. It's all about maths, physics, and applied maths, and can be a distant connection between that and the real world of actual physical making engineering parts. So it was kind of hard to make a connection between what you're studying and is it really what you want to do? So it wasn't until 3rd year I did a work placement in Waterford, Bosch and Lomb, in Waterford, at the end of 3rd year. And really enjoyed that. Really enjoyed it. It was great. It was hard, obviously, going down there, because to Waterford, like I was from Tipperary, So, but I was from the Limerick side of Tipperary, if you know what I mean. So geographically it was far away. All my friends were up in Galway, to pop into a new environment, but really enjoyed it down there. It's one of my favorite memories, as it were. It's a lovely town as well. And it really kind of emphasized for me, reinforced for me that, engineering is actually a good choice. I could finally see the connection,
Yes.
then came back kind of supercharged for final year and took, away from there. I was very happy with the choice then.
Get practical experience. And I think there's so
Yeah.
much value through the work placements, through work experience before you even go into college, through apprenticeships, because taking that theory and putting it into practical terms really helps people understand, is this what I really love? Is this what I want to do? And can mold careers like it has yours, knowing more about what it is you want. And so in the first couple of years then, in your first two jobs, were you clear then, this is what I want, this is my career plan, this is where I want to go, I know this is my career journey?
I'll be honest, there was a lot of uncertainty over it. I mean, that's just a lot of the nature it can be. Now, I graduated in the mid 90s when there wasn't any jobs out there. So early, we got 94. So jobs weren't that plentiful. So I went back and did a master's for 2 years in NUIG, and that was great fun. Lots of the student life and postgraduate life, and plenty of activity. So at the end of that, I took a job in Kildare with an automotive company as a quality engineer. Even though the engineering side of it was nice, the quality side of it, I wasn't quite so sure about it. I felt I wasn't really kind of learning anything at it, to be honest. It was just the nature of the job and the nature of the role. I didn't feel like I was picking up any useful skills. So I then I took a job back in Galway with a research consultancy. They were doing offshore oil and gas installations, doing a lot of finite element analysis. If anybody's into mechanical engineering, they know what that is. They're doing a lot of that kind of engineering analysis of offshore systems. And I found that really beneficial in terms of learning core engineering skills. That was a great learning experience with those guys. And I was 2 years with them. And I suppose with them, I was kind of I was at a turning point in the career then, because I knew that maybe to progress further with those guys, the offshore oil and gas industry is not really based in Ireland. No. So to make a connection between the kind of analysis of the systems you're working on and real kind of practical things that you can tangibly feel, put your hands on or see, you needed to move to an Aberdeen or an Oslo or Houston, Texas, whatever. And that really wasn't something that I wanted to do. And it was that was kind of the seminal point in the career where I said, look, I'm in Galway. I like Galway. What careers are available, or what markets are available in Galway. So medical devices was just kicking off at that stage. 90. This is maybe 2000 actually, yeah. Boston Scientific were ramping big time in Galway. Medtronic was in Galway. Biocompatibles were there, but which came into, I can't remember, was it Abbott or Mednova or something like that? Sorry, Mednova were separate. Abbott, yeah. Biocompatibles became part of Abbott. Yeah, thank you. And I said I got to get into medical devices. So that was how I got into medical devices, was like a decision of, I want to stay in Galway. What's the business in Galway? So it's medical devices. And there was a couple of opportunities came up, and I took the Creganna one. It seemed exciting. I knew a couple of guys inside there, and they were talking good things about it. And it was, a young and emerging company. The company itself wasn't young, but the medical devices wing of it was young and emerging, etc. And it seemed like good fun. And that was a fantastic career choice for me. I really learned. It was a great opportunity. And, that's how I got into it.
It developed, and I bet you the automotive experience that you gained earlier on and the regulations that surrounded that probably really helped you pivot into the medical device side as well.
Yeah, it was helpful. Yeah, definitely. And and then the engineering analysis side of it, I felt was useful as well. And the MCS company, that was a really good experience there in terms of learning engineering fundamentals, and put the two together. Then, as you say, was a help going in. But then, it was my first kind of manufacturing and process development sort of role as well, which I liked, because it was finally kind of hands-on. Physically, you could tangibly touch something and you could work at it. You know what I mean? Because up to that, it had been kind of more theoretical based stuff, and it takes a few weeks to kind of adapt to that, adapt to new environments and all that. But I really loved it, and it took off from there, let's say.
Very good. And so, you're a vice president now. You're a very senior role. What do you think were the steps that you had to take to get to where you are?
Sure. I mean, I know you gave me some questions in advance just to kind of consider, advice on, leadership, how to become a leader, how to become a manager, even in an organization. But you don't go into these roles because you want to lead people, for example, right? I think you move into these positions because you have ambition. You have ambition for the business. You have ambition for what you have a vision for how the business can grow. And you think about that vision, how it could be executed, and then you present that vision to the stakeholders, be it your own managers, your own specific line manager, you're the CEO. If you are the CEO, you would present that vision to your shareholders, etc. And you get buy-in for that vision and that ambition. And that's how, and then people then give you the authority. And that authority comes with, maybe it might come with a team, it might come with a budget. I've worked in roles in the past where I had nobody working for me. I really, really enjoyed them. And, I didn't have to have the burden, as it were, of people management, but still, could influence across an organization because you're creating visions all the time. You're saying, scheming and plotting is what I used to call it. You develop a lot of schemes and plots for how the business can grow. You build a financial model for it, you build a business model for it, you present it out to the various stakeholders, and you get people to row in behind it. And that's how you get authority and responsibility.
There's influencing skills, and I guess there's an entrepreneurial element as well, to be able to have that big picture thinking, to be able to present to the stakeholders, and then the influencing of gaining their buy-in.
Yeah.
And at what point did you know you wanted to be a leader? Some people go the principal route and they decide they don't want to manage people. And then from your perspective, when did you decide that you wanted to be a leader and that you had the skills and qualities to be a leader?
Again, it was always, it was never a point where I said I definitely want to be a manager. It was, I kind of almost fell into an interim engineering manager position in Creganna because the guy that had been filling the role, he moved to another position in the US, and I was almost next in line, let's say, if you know what I mean. So that kind of threw me in at the deep end with a large team of people that I had to supervise and manage, and learned a lot through that. You actually learn a huge amount about managing people and setting expectations and setting goals, and doing that review process and performance feedback, and there's lots of useful skills you pick up there, if you know what I mean.
Definitely skills that you won't always pick up from a textbook. You could study it all day long, but it's not often until you're in the role managing people that you go through the most learning.
Yes, but I would say that and kind of useful tips for anybody listening in is that never to I would say never to kind of pitch yourself as wanting to manage people. Like, that's not the ambition. The ambition should always be what you want to do for your business. So this is my vision for how the business can grow, and then you're pitching to your immediate stakeholders, whether it's your supervisor, your line manager, your CEO, whoever. You're talking about, well, this is how I can contribute to that vision. This is how I can bring things forward, and then the responsibility gets assigned to you almost, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
A very interesting company, just as an aside, I worked with a company in the States called WL Gore. People may be familiar with it. They have multiple divisions, but their medical wing, nobody had official and formal titles. Nobody was a manager in WL Gore. If you met somebody from WL Gore, you got a business card that said they were an associate. Everybody in WL Gore was an associate, full stop. And when you talk to them, they said their structure was very, very flat, and the responsibility and authority was given to you based off of how much you went out and pitched. Almost, you'd make an internal pitch to say, like, this is what I think I can do. I have a vision for this new device I want to bring to market, and here's how much it's going to cost, and here's what I need to do. And then the appropriate managers, obviously there was some decision makers at some level inside there, would then say, yeah, that's okay, let's roll with that, and you can have this team of 50 people here working for you, or 5 people, or 1 person, or whatever the appropriate amount would be. But everybody was at a flat level, and it was about what are you bringing forward to the table here, and let's see how people can row in behind your vision.
Which is so empowering, isn't it? And it's very inspiring to everyone within the business to realize that they have an opportunity to present their ideas, and that they'll be heard and received.
Yes.
And then from your own journey, what would you say, would have been any good mentors or people on your path that you've thought, wow, that was really inspiring. I learned so much, whether it's an influential colleague or a peer. Is there anyone who's inspired you?
Oh, hugely. Yeah. I mean, look, there's a long list. I mean, pretty much everybody that you interact with at a business level, you're going to learn something from them. I mean, you pick little nuggets from everybody, some more so than others, but everybody that you interact with, you'll always, for me anyway, I always find I'm always listening, always trying to understand, trying to think that where that person's coming from, what are they trying to tell me, what message they're picking up, and everybody has a little nugget of wisdom, and you try and pick up different things in different people. But look, there's a couple of really standout people. I mean, Ian Quinn really sticks out. You may be familiar with Ian, but Ian was the founder, the owner of Creganna. Unfortunately, Ian passed away last Christmas, so we're very sad about that. Everybody who worked with him, it was a terrible time with COVID, etc. We couldn't have as nice an opportunity as we would have liked to thank Ian and his family, and Nenda and his wife and his family, and his brother Neil actually was working in the business at the time as well, and Neil was the one who hired me into Creganna. So those guys are hugely influential. Very sharp business people.
Man. Yes, very much so. Yes, I have the pleasure of meeting him. It's absolute inspiration.
Yes, and Ian was he was a sharp businessman, but also a deep thinker, and they're often can be two different things, because sometimes people can be kind of very good at managing day-to-day operations, but don't think big picture, if you know what I mean. But Ian could actually do both. He had the wherewithal to know, all right, we got to manage the day-to-day, but I also need to be thinking out into the future. And he also recognized where his weaknesses were, if you know what I mean. And he used to talk to me about how, I don't think as the business grows, I need to bring in managers to do certain jobs for me, was his philosophy. And he wasn't afraid to do that, and he wasn't afraid to empower other people. And I was a relatively young engineer at the time. There was other younger engineers, or young people as young as me, if you like, around me, and he empowered all of us. And it was fantastic, actually, and it was a great vote of confidence when somebody does that for you as well. And he brought in other people. It wasn't just empowering young engineers. He brought in managers where you needed to. Helen Ryan came in. Helen was brilliant as well. Helen became the CEO, followed up from me, and worked very closely with him. So you learn from all of these people. I mean, the list goes on. There's a huge number of people in Creganna that I could list out over the years. Finance people are very influential inside there. Chip Hans came in after Helen. He was another really sharp business leader. Even working here in Aran, I mean, Peter, our CEO here, really good CEO, very sharp, has worked, really kind of worked hard building up Proxy Biomedical initially, and then Aran Biomedical. So as I say, you'll pick up lots of nuggets from different people over the years, and it's always good to keep an open mind and learn from everybody.
And Peter would be another deep thinker. I know my dealings with Peter. He's always been such a pleasure and holds such a high level position, but makes everyone feel special, whoever he needs to come in contact with.
Yeah.
And what about, when you make it to vice president, there must be sacrifices along the way. Are there any sacrifices you've had to make?
Look, I mean, we all have to make choices along the way, different career choices. I mean, for me, and I know it's a bit cliched, but family is very important for me. And, I like being in Galway. They used to be a young family, but they're getting a bit older now. I've my eldest, she's in Leaving Cert, and then two boys, they're 16 and 14. And, it's always been important for me to, as much as possible, to be around for family, if you know what I mean. So over the years, particularly when I was in Creganna, I had to do a lot of travel. I could have done more travel, and arguably, if I was really focused on career and career only, within Creganna and subsequently definitely within TE, it was always rewarded within TE if you were willing to move to different geographical locations. You know what I mean? So, it was pitched to me one time, would I be interested to move to Asia, for example? And I wasn't, because my family would divorce me if they wanted to move out of Galway. That's just the way it is.
Family first,
and or move to the US, and again, I like going to the US. Is a lovely country, but I'm not interested in raising my family there, if you know what I mean. And I like Galway. I'm vested in the town, and for me that was always a conscious decision that I'm not going to move out of this area, and whatever choices I make in career is going to be based on going to make it happen here. And so there's challenges with that.
The beautiful location, I know, with the Aran Biomedical plant. I know anytime I go out there, it must be one of the most beautiful locations of all.
So
it's so scenic, and you managed to get the best of both. You managed to get the career vice president for Aran Biomedical, as well as being in the most beautiful location.
Yeah.
I think there was a survey done recently that Galway, people in Galway are the happiest people in the world. So you picked the right location.
Yeah, no, it's nice. And the commute out here, by the way, is fantastic. I mean, I live, like a lot of people, live on the western side of Galway City. And I used to have to cross town to Parkmore every day.
Yes.
And, that could be horrendous. If there was no traffic, it was 25 minutes. If there was traffic, it could be 50 minutes. And you never knew from one day to the next. So that was the problem, is you couldn't plan. That's the problem with traffic in Galway.
Yes.
So, but at least with Aran, I'm out Spittle here. It's kind of 15 minutes, 15 to 18 minutes. That's the window, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's great. It's guaranteed every time. And it's a nice drive as well.
It's a fabulous drive, absolutely, and great location. And if you look at, say, as a leader that you are now, and the leaders in general, what are some of the challenges you think leaders are facing today?
Oh, yeah. I mean, leaders today, I mean, you have to be so many things, right? You've got to be a HR manager. You've got to be, with your staff, because it's super, super important. And you have to be conscious of managing staff, and staff expect more, and rightfully expect more. We live in a knowledge economy, right? And the value is created through people's creative efforts. There's a certain number of transactional jobs that exist in every business, but as we move into kind of support roles, particularly engineering roles, we expect people to bring creativity to the game. They expect them to bring their brains to work every day. And the quid pro quo with that is that as employers, you've got to be able to engage with those people as well, and keep them motivated, right? And make sure they're constantly challenged in a positive way. All right. So that's an immediate challenge, this kind of knowledge economy that we live in here now, making sure that people are engaged both, and it's that two-way street. And then there's, you have to be a finance manager. You have to have a detailed knowledge of finance and financial structuring of businesses, and how to get the most out of your business. You have to have a strong knowledge of the regulations within your industry. We're a medical device, we're strongly regulated, but similarly, if you're in pharma, if you're in automotive, if you're in electronics, depending, no matter what industry you're in, there's going to be regulations you got to know and you got to understand. And I could go on, I mean, so you have to bring all of those kind of almost encyclopedic pieces of information. And the best way to think about it then is, as you move up through the levels, as it were, of responsibility, is being able to delegate, thinking of yourself as the conductor of the orchestra. I mean, you don't have to be the best violin player, you don't have to be the best piano player, but just as long as you know that the right people are in the right seats, and that they're playing the instruments at the right time and the right sequence, then that's what your job is, if you know what I mean. And that's as you increase your responsibility. But in the first instance, you got to prove your competency, and it depends on who's listening here, at what stage in your career you're at, or you at the earlier stage of your career, or later on, if you know what I mean. You have to prove your competency first, and then learn the ability to delegate. And that is something that, as people get more responsibility, more managerial responsibility, more authority, as it were, it's always a double-edged sword. You give them the authority because they're good at the jobs they're doing, right? And that's the mode of behavior that they're used to working in, that they just roll up the sleeves, go in and do the job. But then as you give them more authority, they can't do all that themselves. And they need to recognize that they're judged not on their own personal performance anymore, but on the performance of their team. And they might have a team of 5 to 10 people. So they need to spend more time developing the team and hiring, and not, when you're under pressure, then going back on the old default mode of operating, which is, let's roll up the sleeves and I'll do it myself. That's the worst words I hear out of a manager.
Yeah, and that is the challenge, and being able to delegate and trust the team to be able to look after it, and being able to raise themselves into the next level to become more of the orchestrator. Like you say. And on your career so far, what's the hardest thing you've had to do? What's the biggest challenge that you felt was the most difficult thing you've had to do so far in your career?
Yeah, look, I mean, I think at some stage in most people's, I'd nearly say everybody's career, sooner or later, you're going to have to make some hard choices as to whether you stay or go in the job that you're in. Do you stick or twist, right? Often that decision is based off maybe some kind of financial constraints that you're under, right? So, a typical career path might be that, after 5 or 10 years, you'll eventually have found yourself in a job where you can do it really well. Your employer really values you, and your employer will then try and put some form of golden handcuffs, for want of a better word, on you. You know, they'll pay you well. They'll maybe might give you some options depending on where you're at in the organization, or they might give you a nice bonus, or they'll create certain work conditions that are really, really nice for you, attractive work conditions, maybe, you know, an ability to work from home or a flexible working time. But either way, your employer, if you're doing your job well, they'll do the best they can to retain you, right? So then you might reach a point though that you're going, well, you know, 10 years into a role, 15 years into a role, you might think, well, you know, I've kind of stopped learning here now. I can do this job, but I'm not learning anything new. And, you know, the days blend into weeks, into months, into years, and you're going, the last while, I don't feel like I've developed as a person. And that's the hard choice you're going to have to make, because you might be faced with a choice of, well, if I want to do the job that I'd like to do, or to redevelop as a person, I'm going to have to make a hard choice here. And I might have to leave something behind. I might have to take a pay cut. I might have to move somewhere and, you know, change working conditions. And that's a hard choice that a lot of people are going to have to face at some stage. Or maybe you want to go out and form your own business, but when you do that, you take a huge financial risk. You might be leaving the comfort of a guaranteed income stream for maybe a much lower salary starting off with uncertain future. Is it really going to work out? Those are the really hard decisions. And I wish I could say that it's always the case that you should always take the leap or take the gamble. It's not as simple as that. You know, there are times that you have to be very careful. That I've seen people make the wrong choices.
Yes.
You know what I mean? People maybe move at the wrong time. Maybe they, you know, maybe they leave something behind. If they hung on for another 18 months, they might have, you know, had some extra bonuses or something, or maybe they moved to the wrong role, and you're looking over at them going, okay, I knew you wanted to move, but maybe that wasn't the right move to make.
Yeah.
You know, so that's the hard choices.
Yeah, hard choices. And I think people really value now seeing the loyalty, where people have stayed in their jobs, gone through the difficult times, faced those challenges, and has been able to push through those. And because often the grass is not always greener, people make that move. And the tenure of an engineer at the moment is around 2 years that they're moving jobs. But it's not because the grass is always greener. And sometimes, like you say, they're making those moves for the wrong decision, for the wrong reasons, rather. Yeah.
And don't be afraid to talk to your employer. And if you do feel you're not growing, I mean, that should always be the first protocol.
Number one. Yeah, because often it can be changed and molded to suit their needs. But if that conversation doesn't happen, the employer is unaware.
But then there are also times when you do need to move, and that's why I'm saying there's no one size fits all answer here, and it's always case by case. It's always circumstance specific, you know. But definitely always talk to your own employer first to see if there's an opportunity to learn new things within your organization, because that's the best of every world, you know. Learn new skills. I learned huge. I transitioned through several roles within Creganna over the years. You know, I mean, I started off as a process development engineer, ended up as in a business development manager role. You know, and in fact, that was a voyage for myself. That, you know, as an engineer, you always think of yourself as you don't want to be a salesman, you know, because you have this view of maybe a cliched view of used car salesmen as maybe not being that sincere, you know what I mean? And you think that business development is that world, you know, but it's actually certainly not in our business, where we're a contract medical device manufacturer, and it's always a business to business sale, and our customers always want to talk to people with strong technical knowledge. So our best business development people come from engineering backgrounds, because you know, they're able to speak the lingo. And then I always think that, you know, the proposal should sell itself, and the work that you do is internally. It's not so much the sale of the proposal. If you've done your job well, you've built a really compelling proposal, and the proposal sells itself. So, you know, it's not about your salesmanship. It's about your ability to craft the correct proposal and listen to your customer.
Solutions, because it's not a sale, it's a solutions that you offer, and therefore you know, it's needed. And it's not like you need to sell in the same way sales used to be seen as. In fact, it's quite the reverse now. And that, so that you know, that risk then of making those moves. I mean, that move then you made to Aran Biomedical, you know, being able to progress from, say, manager to VP, you know, that was clearly the right move, because you may not have got that opportunity if you'd stayed in your previous role.
Correct. Yeah, I mean, that can be a drawback in a larger organization. People do tend to be pigeonholed quite a bit, and you know, there can be, for want of a better word, glass ceilings or boundaries put around you, and for, you know, I'm not saying that those that apply to me or anything. There could have been great opportunities for me as well, but I just felt that at the time it was the right move for me to make. If you know what I mean.
There's no doubt about it. In a small to or more medium-sized business, you get so much more exposure to different areas than you will in some of the bigger organizations.
Yeah,
so
you
people
do, and you
like to get that experience. And I know with you guys, you get to do everything from the R&D to the right through to the new product introduction, right through to taking it to the commercialization. I think that opportunity, there's always something there for everybody to find the niche of what they love.
Yeah, and when TE took over Creganna, I remember our manager at the time saying to us, when the CEO of TE, and there's a 40,000 person organization there, so when he sits down and thinks about how he can run his organization, he has to think about process. You know what I mean? So if he defines a rigorous process for everything that you do, whether it's HR, finance, engineering, whatever, you proceduralize everything, then you can be sure that so long as people are following the process, then everybody's doing things the same way, if you know what I mean. That's how you manage a 40,000 person organization. But then at an individual level, that means your job becomes very strictly defined with a finite box around it, and you only do this bit. Okay, you can move to another job. Maybe you move from a business development to an engineering role, or engineering to a quality role, but you don't cross function or cross fertilize the roles, if you know what I mean. You just do your specific role. If you're in a smaller company, you do get to do the broader range of roles. Now, there's drawbacks to the smaller companies as well, as you know. So, there's pros and cons to everything.
Pros and cons, and it's down to the individual and what really suits them and what they're looking for. And with your own team, I mean, people are finding it really hard out there to attract great talent, to retain really good talent. What are some of the things you're doing to sort of to keep an engaged and happy team with a really strong culture?
So first of all, performance management is important. So we meet weekly with our engineering teams, and we go through every single project that's on our books each week, and we get people to update us on it. And as much as possible, we try and empower our younger engineers or less experienced engineers to be vocal with that, and to tell us what they're working on. Because it's good for their development as well. So that's on the performance management side, and that's how we challenge our teams to stay honest, as it were, to make sure that they're constantly making improvements and constantly doing what they need to do. And then, so that's how we challenge them, but they can challenge us then back by, our challenge back to them is to ensure that we're always presenting new opportunities to them, that we're not kind of making sure that the same individual is stuck on the same project for 9 months doing the same job. All right. Because we recognize that that's our contract back to the individuals, to make sure that we're challenging them too. And it goes back to my point earlier about knowledge economies, people bringing creativity and engagement to the game. Unless we're providing opportunities for people as well, then it's only reasonable for them to kind of want more, if you know what I mean.
Yes.
So that then becomes that two-way street, and that's part of the performance management. So we always like within our business that each week there has to be a one-to-one with your team, each person individually, just talking through the projects, and that's what your direct line supervisor, your direct line manager, talking through the project. Where does it stand? How's it going? How are you feeling? And that's how performance management is measured all the way up, and that has to be a two-way dialogue, if you know what I mean. So it's like, we're happy with you, but are you happy with us, type of thing. So that's how that process generally is managed.
Really important.
Yeah.
And when you're looking to hire for your team there in Aran Biomedical, what are some of the qualities that you're looking for in your people? So when you're hiring for your teams?
Yeah, well, look, obviously there's quality roles, finance roles, but I'll speak specifically about design services engineering, right? Because that's the group that I would have direct responsibility for. And we're a very technically oriented company. So technical proficiency is key, is actually the number one thing. So we do look for, if we're looking for younger engineers, for example, we will look at their academic record. We'll look at what universities they went to, what results they got, because, that tells us whether there's a certain baseline level of performance within the individual. Do they have the ability to be able to take complex, theories and processes, et cetera, and understand them and regurgitate them and be able to present them in exams, pressure scenarios. So that's the number one thing that we look for. And then we look for other signals on CVs, so we do like people who can display some sort of maybe technical hobby, for want of a better word. Some people like fixing go-karts, maybe building surfboards, wacky things. Like it doesn't have to be that, you've got your own medical device company in your back shed. No, we don't expect that. But, if you have some kind of hobby, or maybe you come from a farming background, and, it doesn't have to be all male oriented hobbies either, if you know what I mean, that, go-karting or farming, we look for all sorts of things, all sorts of signals, pointers that might indicate that this person has a very good technical mindset.
Yeah, and a passion for that.
Yeah, a passion.
If they're
Exactly.
doing it in their spare time, it's something that they love. And if they
That's a great
love
word. Yeah.
it comes easy to them.
Yes.
It's a natural inherent ability in them.
Because really, it's part of people being honest, and we understand that people at the early stages of their career sometimes need to, let's say, find themselves, if you know what I mean. So sometimes they mightn't even know themselves. So we look for, I love that word you use, their passion. We look for something like that, some kind of signal that would show that there's an inherent motivation in the individual, that this is the area that they like working at.
Yeah. And I think that work ethic as well. Some of our clients look for people who have worked their way through college, or have been involved in jobs, part-time jobs in their early career. It goes to show how they've been able to balance workload and had the dedication to put behind their education.
You look for all those. Exactly, you're dead right, and we look for all those sort of pointers. Sometimes sporting achievements can be good. I mean, it's a double-edged sword. Obviously, you don't judge people just whether they won an All-Ireland minor medal, for example. Like, that doesn't really matter. It's more, are they able to balance, those kind of work-life challenges? Can they do it all together?
Because that works very well in here, where we find people who have those extracurricular outdoor activities on the weekend seem to have a really good balance. I think that whole releasing of endorphins and, releasing any stress from the week can be done through sports and activities, getting that heart rate up and feeling good. So that really works well with our own hiring. And on the contracting side, I know people have found it difficult to get staff, and a lot of companies are looking to bring in contractors to fill the voids and the gaps. Is that something that, do you place much value on that? Is it something that you do there in Aran Biomedical?
Yes. We do. We don't have any contractors at the moment, but we're definitely open to it. I've used it a lot, both personally, but also within wider teams within Creganna. Back in the day, in Creganna we used it quite a bit to fill gaps. In the business that we're in right now, we can often see sudden spikes in demand, unexpected spikes in demand, if you know what I mean. And the contractors are a great way to help us out with that. Be it at validation, project management, contract engineering. So it's definitely something that we are open to using in Creganna, or in Aran, should I say? Sorry, have used in Creganna. But we just haven't found the right candidates right now to help us out with it. The downside with contracting is that you're not vested in the individual as much. I'd be reluctant to use them for core R&D projects. In fact, I wouldn't use contractors at all for core R&D projects, because there's no point in educating somebody in our core IP and then seeing it walk out the door.
Having to go somewhere else,
But more, maybe roles like a validation role or something like that, where they're bringing a specific skill and knowledge and how to write protocols, generate them, get them done quickly. That's great. They're bringing something to the table. We need that. They're doing it. Yes. Fantastic. Job done.
Validation's a perfect example. Automation, so we then come in and improve the process and automate it for you. Very good. And do you think the trend will continue for the demand of contractors?
Yes, I definitely think it will continue, but it's a dangerous game as a contractor, right? Because you're the first to go. As soon as we see a downturn in orders, if there's even a sneeze from our customers in terms of a change in forecast, first thing we'll be doing is cutting contractors, right? Whereas your permanent staff are, part of the cliche, they're almost like family to you. You've made a commitment to them, and it's personal. There's also legal commitments, but even aside from the legal side of it, our permanent staff are people that we feel we've a almost personal contract with, that we know that they've commitments, with financial commitments with families, etc. So we're always loath to do anything on with direct staff, but the contractors is your safety valve. You can turn them up, dial them up, or dial them down, and that's the flip side with contractors. So
that's the risk of the sector.
That's their risk. Exactly.
It's the reward that comes with it can often be more lucrative.
You pay a premium for them. We understand that, and but then they carry all their costs, as you were saying before. They have to carry all their own PRSI, healthcare, holiday costs, and so on. So it's a double-edged sword. But if you're asking me, do I see a trend for continuing? Then yes, absolutely, definitely. The need for contractors will continue, but there is a risk at an individual level for anybody involved in that game.
Yes, and I think as a contractor, the more you can become a subject matter expert and the more you can get really niche and become an expert in your sector, you'll know that there'll always be contracts lined up for you. Because, even things like validation and automation, they're skills that are so difficult to find right now.
Regulatory affairs, I know a friend of mine, she's in college with me, and I know she's a very successful business in regulatory affairs, and that's always needed because people are always developing new products. It has to be, and sometimes that specific RA expertise may be only something you need at one particular point along the product development life cycle. So an individual company may not be able to afford a full-time senior level or regulatory affairs person, but the contracting business works really well both for the company and for the people doing the contracting.
Works very well, and things like MDR when to bring in contractors to deal with a set piece of work like that, it worked really, really well.
Yeah, definitely.
And with, say, the last 2 years with the whole pandemic and everything that's been going on, how did that impact Aran Biomedical, and how did you guys manage through this time, and any key learnings?
Good. There's some learnings. So first of all, at the very start, obviously, we were really concerned how's it going to impact our lines, our manufacturing, are going to be down, etc. And then because, as a medical device manufacturer, at the very, very start, we were identified as key workers. So that allowed us to keep our manufacturing lines going. So that was great. So our manufacturing staff could come in. And then, our manufacturing engineering staff were needed to support the line, so they were able to come on site as well. Very initially, our R&D staff, we were giving them the option of being able to work from home when they could. If there was work that they could take home with them, we were encouraging them to do that. And we invested in IT equipment, laptops. So it was a run on laptops around the city and around the world, I'm sure, for a period of time. Allowing people to have that technology to be able to take home. And over time, then, as everybody understood restrictions and pandemics, and there was kind of an easing on it, more of the R&D people just kind of drifted more back into the office, kind of full time, if you know what I mean, and quality staff, etc. The other functions then took more time to come back. So, our finance teams, our materials purchasing teams, etc., they're now all back on site as well. But the one group maybe that haven't yet come back on site is our business development teams. So we've got a couple of business development managers who are, have a more kind of global focus. Those guys are still working from home, and there's no immediate panic or rush to bring them back either, because they're working quite productively from their home offices, and they're coming in as they need, because they both live. There's two guys in particular live local to here. They pop in when they need to chat to an engineer, and then they go home, and they can have the space to write the proposal, engage with the client. I mean, half their days are spent on calls. 70% of our business is in the US, so after 2:00 in the afternoon, our business development people typically are busy on calls talking to clients in the US, and they're quite happy to do that from their own house. They don't need to be at a desk inside the office for that. So
and I think it's changed a lot of companies' perspective on working from home, and also from how they hire. So like usually we'd all feel they had to be in situ, like your business development team, but really they can be anywhere and do as good a job, if not better. So I think companies are starting to change the mindset as to how they hire.
I do think that is a permanent change that will come back in, is that people will recognize that it is possible to be quite productive working from home. All right. But it depends on the job. All right. So again, you and I were chatting beforehand on this, but manufacturing engineers need to be supporting a manufacturing line. If a piece of equipment goes down and you can't plan that it goes down, you need to be on site just to make sure that, when that unexpected event happens, that, you can go in and impact it. But, for other roles, maybe you don't need to be on site all the time, or maybe it's a hybrid kind of thing that you can pop in and out. Maybe some of the R&D functions, if you're having to write a protocol for a period of time, you can go home, do that, come back in to do some tests. So the main thing is that it's about results rather than the number of hours in the office.
Absolutely. It's definitely, we're seeing more and more of that. We're seeing more candidates looking for the flexibility to have like the hybrid model. We have some people who are saying, I'm only interested in a job that's on site because I can't work from home. It's just not a model that works. So we're seeing a lot of individual requirements and needs from our candidates now around the working model. And so, from when you're looking at, say, lessons learned, Michael, if you go back in time and if you were to say, what would you do differently? Is there anything that you would do differently when you look back?
Um, Look, you can look at dozens of little micro decisions that you could have done differently, meetings or decisions or, career paths and all that that could have been done differently. Obviously, if I knew now what I knew back then, or vice versa, should I say, I could have done different things. Uh, I've learned a lot about R&D, internal R&D versus where to spend your money. There's, as engineers, we often get excited by technologies, and we can invest in products or in concepts that maybe aren't that successful because we get excited about it, but will our customers actually buy it? So I'd always say focus your R&D on where customers are actually purchasing your products, if you know what I mean. Not trying to push technologies because you think there could be an application for it, or maybe some guy has a conversation with you and says, it would be really nice if X, Y, or Z was developed for me, and you develop X, Y, or Z, and then he goes, yeah, that's nice, but could you tweak it a little bit more? That it's purchase orders and commitments and guarantees of sales. That's where your R&D should be focused. I mean, that's on a business level.
Yeah.
At a career level, I would say that it's if you're starting off at your career, the most important thing you can do within the first 5 years is to be like a sponge for information and knowledge, because that's what sets you up more than anything else. And so many of the engineers that I've engaged with focus too much on salary for the first 5 years. All right. The salary does come. All right. That's what I need to say to everybody. You will get the rewards. And like I said, the hardest choice you'll ever have to make in your career is after you've got the salary, after you've got the big salary. And now you've realized that maybe I've stopped learning in this job and I need to move on because I'm no longer getting the skills here. That's the hardest choice you'll have to make. But actually the key thing is in that first 5 years, learning the right skills and focusing less on salary. I've had people, talking about how, they're maybe 2 years out of college, and some guy that they were in school with is earning 10 grand a year more than them. And they're worried. Obviously, everybody's comparing to their peers, and they're going, yeah, but I'm behind him. I'm 10,000 behind him. Will I ever make up that gap? And I'm going like, you're only 2 years out of college. I mean, give it 5 years, give it 7 years. You'll be. It's all about the experience you gain and how much that sets you up.
Yes.
So be like a sponge in the early phases. And if your employer isn't giving you the opportunity to learn, if you're finding yourself sitting at your desk, you're a year and a half out of college, you're sitting at your desk and not doing anything because nobody's coming to you, because that can happen. People can get lost in organizations, nobody's coming to you, you're not being challenged, you're not being given a new project, then move. All right. Now, first port of call should always be move within your own organization, put the hand up to say, I could do more here. Definitely always talk within your own organization first.
Yes.
But then if that's not forthcoming, then do put the hand up and talk to Hero, talk to whoever, and look around. But focus on skills and experience first.
Because the salary will come exactly.
Salary will come, yeah.
And if you're a sponge at the beginning stage and you learn so much technology and you get all that experience, the salary will come without a doubt. And that's once again the beauty of working with a medium-sized company. The exposure that you get and how that sets you up is invaluable.
Yeah.
You don't become pigeonholed. You don't have to follow one process all the time. You get to bring a creative flair to your role, which brings so much experience, and definitely the salary does come.
Yeah.
And so what's next when you look at the future, and if you were to predict how things will look, or what's the future of the medical device or the life science industry, what do you think's next? How's it going to look? How are things changing?
I think it's a great industry. People, it's such a cliche, but people are always getting sick. All right. And so the medical device industry goes through waves of innovation, that kind of, the economists describe it as the waves of disruption and all that kind of stuff. But, 20 years ago, it was all about stents and catheters. And then, they became commonplace. And then there was pressure on them to reduce pricing. And then that market matured. And people who could only work in manufacturing or designing stents, their market opportunities became more limited. But then, structural heart came along, TAVI heart valves came along, mitral valve heart valves, and now we're in that future wave. So the TAVI is, our aortic valves is almost a little bit becoming to mature, but, it's all about mitral and tricuspid valve therapies, if you know what I mean.
Yes.
And that market space is really, there's any amount of R&D money chasing that area right now. Big returns being made in it. And if you give it 10 years, that market will mature, and the therapies will have been, the clinicians out there will have agreed, yeah, this is the standard mode of care. This device is better than that device, so this is the right procedure. That market will mature, but then another one will emerge. There's so many untapped potentials. I mean, think about it: cancer, diabetes, the diseases that can be addressed or fixed are endless out there. And, economies are always growing. Healthcare spend is growing in every economy. That healthcare spend, those healthcare dollars will always follow critical diseases. Yes. So in the long term, the trends are always strong. What's important, though, is to be flexible and adaptable. I do remember Chip Hans was one of the guys that I worked with, and he told an interesting story. I hope I'm not revealing anything here. I don't think so. But he used to be president of Abbott Vascular in a previous life, and Abbott Vascular had a very, very large site in Temecula, California, where they had 7,000 or 8,000 people making balloon catheters and stents, and they were fully vertically integrated in that site. They knew everything, how to manufacture the devices, the stents, the lasers, the technologies, the processes. You couldn't do anything better than that. And he said that was fantastic. He said, but then the game changed. He said it all became about structural heart. And he said, I had nobody in Abbott who knew how to design a structural heart device. And he said, I, as president, this is him back in the day, he said, I had to go out and engage with his own leadership about purchasing businesses that were in that space. They bought a company called eValve, I think, at the time, and others, and then they moved on. But that's what I mean about flexibility then in people's careers is important. Just recognize and understand that the more flexibility your skills have, the better you will be, that you can adapt. You can move from coronary stents to structural heart valves, and move from structural heart valves to the next thing. I actually don't know what the next thing is going to be. If I had a crystal ball, I'd be a wealthy man, if you know what I mean. I can't predict what that's going to be. I just know there's going to be another big wave of investment in 10 years' time. But right now it's structural heart, and it's going really, really strong.
And we saw that shift here from a recruitment perspective. We saw it go from the stent to the structural heart, and that became the main focus, and the skill sets that were needed around that to support. And so if you're an engineer, if you're talking to the engineers listening today, is there any advice you'd give them by way of the upskilling, or what they should be maybe focusing their attention on by way of, say, technical skills?
Yeah, look, it depends, first of all, whether they're focused on process technologies or product. So if you're a product development engineer, you absolutely have to know the design control process inside out, upside down, because then the innovation aspect of it is always available to people. The design ideas, but the really strong product development engineers know that product development process inside out, how to translate from design concept through to finished regulated device. So your input output matrix, converting a design input to a design output specification, to how you're going to test that, how that links to the DFMEA, the risk analysis, how you're going to test the safety profile of that device. Different devices have different safety profiles. Some are 510K, some are PMR, and how that links to your statistics analysis and all that. You just know that process inside out, because those skills are generic then, if you know what I mean. You can transfer them to any device, right? And then if you're a process development engineer, it all depends on what processes you might be a specialist in lasering. I mean, then you're going on the laser route, or you might be a specialist in extrusion, then you got to learn everything about extrusion and so on, you know what I mean? You might have a specific textile. I can't pick out one above another to say one is better than the other. We love textiles engineers here, you know what I mean? Because that's the game that we're in, and we really look for people in that. Or if you're in automation and so on. So, yes. So it's, I'm sorry now if that's kind of a too vague an answer, but
it depends on the area that
depends on the area you're in. Exactly.
Yeah, but no, that's really, really helpful.
But just stay upskilled all the time with the latest innovations. That's key.
Yes. And how would you recommend, or where should people go to stay up to date with the latest innovations? Is there any good sources that you would recommend people tap into?
For me in our game, I would say if you're looking for process technologies, it's trade shows, right? So, there's MD&M West in California is like the big show in our game, but they also have Compomed in Germany, and events like that. And when you go to those shows, you see what are the latest trends and what people are trying to sell. That's on the process side. If you're on the product side, then obviously you gotta stay close to the sales and marketing team within your organizations, and looking at what's happening in PCR and TCT. Those are the big clinical conferences. If you're a product development engineer, and you want to advance your career, and if you're in a Medtronic or Boston Scientific, Abbott, wherever, Sarah Novus, a great company in town here as well, stay close to your sales and marketing people, because they're the people at the cold face talking to the clinicians. Don't ever, I suppose I'd say, don't take your advice from one individual doctor, because we see that as well. And, every doctor has their own idea of what's going to be the latest and greatest, but the sales and marketing people in the larger companies like the J&Js and the Medtronics, they see the feedback from 1,000 doctors, and they're able to tell you what, the accumulated wisdom is.
Yes.
Right. Those are the guys to stay close to. So always stay close to the customer, and that's very much the case with our game. We're business to business contract medical. So it's easier for us to be close to the customer because we're always talking to the engineers and the customer accounts. They can tell us. It can be harder if you're in in Medtronic, for example, your customer, there's 10,000 doctors around the globe. How do you stay close to 10,000 doctors? Well, maybe you stay close to your marketing people because they'll tell you what the doctors are saying. And that's how you get close to the business, and that's how you can add value to your business.
So you see the emerging trends because they're at the leading edge of hearing exactly what's happening on the ground. And from the end users. Very good. And so when you look at, say, what would you say has been the best advice, business advice you've been given? Is there anything that's really helped shape you that you would share to our listeners?
I thought of some things overnight, and a lot of them have escaped me. But one of them I'd say is definitely follow the money. In terms of business advice, if you're wondering what to do next, where to go next, follow the money. Right. So where are your customers spending money on with you? Where are their pain points? Where are they willing to drop the extra dollars, the premium dollars? Right. And as I said, too many businesses have, I'm an engineer myself. The engineering fallback trend is always to love your technology and to be pushing your own ideas and go, I think I know what will solve our customers' problems. It's this idea, right? And you put a lot of money into that idea, and then you present it to your customers, and you find actually maybe they like it, but they're not willing to put the money down for it. Always just bias and just observe where your customers are actually paying money for your device. Where are they placing the purchase orders? That's where you need to invest in. All right. Back in, again, not disclosing any secrets, but back in 2005, Creganna, we were looking at our hypertube business. That was the mainstay of Creganna. And I remember talking to the business development manager at the time, and he was saying, I think we're tapped out here in hypertubes. Like I look around it, we've got all of the major accounts. We've got all the major volume. I don't think there's any more room to grow in hypertubes. So we need to find new market areas. And we used to drive ourselves crazy. Like I used to come out of brainstorming sessions with headaches, because we'd be concentrating so hard about where are we going to get the next growth out of. But yet that was 2005. By 2010, that hypertube business had doubled in size, and it had doubled in size by pretty much just by adding value to the existing markets, the products that we had. So instead of just selling a simple thin hypertube, we were selling a hypertube with an overmolding on one end and maybe a feature on the other side, or maybe an extrusion. We're just adding more value to the basic component. Yes. If we had sat back and thought about it more in 2005, we would have seen that our customers were coming to us with the R&D prototype orders to do that. If you know what I mean. We never needed to annoy ourselves or tease ourselves so much about trying to find new areas, But
it was there in plain sight. You could.
It was always there in plain sight, yeah. But that's great in hindsight, Back in 2005, when you're in the heat of the moment and you're making a critical analytical judgment, you're going, should we have the market share here? How are we going to get the extra growth? It's a tough place to be, But that's the business advice I'd give to people, is just,
And that listen first and listen more to the customer, because they're sharing the pain points. And when we're solving those, that's always the best model. Yeah, very good. Well, Michael, thank you so much. It's been fantastic having you on our High Flyers and STEM podcast. We really appreciate the time you've taken to talk to us today. There's so much we've learned from speaking with you. If some of our listeners would like to maybe have some questions, or they'd like to get in touch, is that possible that they can reach out and what would be?
Sure. Yeah. Like I'm on LinkedIn, so if people want, they can contact me directly through LinkedIn. It's perfect, and I'll respond to all reasonable requests for information. So as long as there's nothing to be, nobody's looking for anything confidential, that's fine.
Of course,
I'll help out, no problem.
And also, if they want to reach out to us, we can field anything to Michael. Michael, it's been really insightful. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us.
Thank you. Thanks, Roisin.
Thank you very much for being on our show.
Thanks very much.
Such a great episode. We really enjoyed speaking to Michael Howe, who's the VP of Engineering and Business Development for Aran Biomedical. Subscribe and like, etc., or follow or connect with us on LinkedIn. We hope you enjoyed the show. See you next time.